right. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the fourth live stream for History Fix's Behind the Scenes series. I'm Will, one of the partners of History Fix, and with us tonight is Miss Brenna Malloy. Welcome, Brenna.
Hello, thank you.
So, before we get up and get going and talk to Brenna and talk about her short rocket, just to remind everybody, History Fix is an online streaming platform dedicated to history content. We don't care whether it's a movie, a documentary, a short film, or a how-to. Come find a different way to escape into history with us. You can find us at www.historyfix.com. And there are 6 apps, whether it's Apple, Amazon, Google, Roku, or others, where you get your streaming, you can also get us. So different ways to find it, and we'll hope you'll come join us. So as we start this evening, Brenna's show Rocket, we're glad is with us. If you're fans of Rocket or have seen Brenna somewhere else and are interested in trying History Fix, here is a discount code for 20% off the first year of the annual plan, Rocket 20, and we'll run that back up a little later. Okay, housekeeping out of the way. Go ahead and, Brenna, just introduce yourself for us if you would.
Hello, I'm Brenna Malloy. I am a television director. I am from Long Beach, California, where I now currently live again. And I've been directing TV the last few years. I think I've done 6 or 7 different shows. I've done 20, I was doing my 23rd and 24th episode when the strike happened. And now I'm enjoying life until the strike is over.
Well, glad to have you with us. Sorry that we're not together. To let you go, as no, Brenna and I do work together in the larger world. We've worked on a wolf show together and have gotten, Brenna's graced us by visiting our show probably 5 or 6 times now.
7 times. You've had to
7
put up
times.
with me 7 different
Well, I
times.
don't know. Put up, it's more you going ahead and putting up with me because I'm the one who usually has to tell you no rather than the other way around. It's never a lot of fun, but we get to do a lot of creative things. We've done some film noir looks. We've done an entire episode in a quick market or a grocery store. So there's been some really fun stories and some fun ways to tell stories. So that's been great. But as we
100%.
roll back in, we roll into stories here, Brenna. Introduce us to Rocket.
Rocket is a very personal movie. It's in many ways, what's on the screen and then what happened behind the camera as well while we were making the film. This was my thesis film from grad school, and I set out to make a film that showcased what I was capable of and also told a story I deeply, believed in and was passionate about. So I had this idea the first year I was in film school and basically spent the next 3 years prepping to make this film, meaning my smaller projects were all on the path to make this. And obviously, we can talk more about the film, but what happened after is made the film, shared it with the world. It ended up winning a Student Academy Award, and that's what started my career and ultimately led me to television. So the Student Academy Awards is a really cool part of the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences. It actually kicks off their sort of awards season. I believe they've been doing it for around 50 years, and filmmakers like Spike Jones has, sorry, Spike Lee has won. Um, Cary Fukunaga has won. It's been like a place for young filmmakers who are in school to submit their work and potentially get noticed by the industry in order to help bridge the gap to the next step of their career and ultimately celebrate the films they've made. So for Rocket, we submitted more just because we could. We never considered the fact that we'd make it even past the first round. So the fact that we won a Student Academy Award, and that being what got me representation and what got me meetings, which led to my first episode of television.
Well, great.
I
Well,
never
that
saw that coming.
no. Well, I'm glad it did because it led to us meeting. let's back up. Let's go, I assume, to much younger Brenna. Where does the movie making bug bite you?
I've always loved movies. Looking back at childhood, I think I'd get lost in stories. So it's really less about the movie making bug and more like the storytelling bug bit me from an early age. I'd read books, I'd watch movies, TV shows, and I would much rather do that than go to school or do anything academic, which made me think I was behind in life. But it turns out, no, I was ahead in a very specific region. Really, the thing that changed my life is when I was 20 years old, I tried to study abroad in college, ended up in London, and by no fault of my own, I found myself in drama school, and it really taught me in a way I don't think I could have learned even if I tried, the approach to storytelling through directing, which was very theater based, and it really gave me the ability to work with actors in a way that I also don't think I could have gotten if I tried. And so that sort of like childhood of loving stories, coupled with my experience in London, kind of set me on a path that I've been on ever since of just being a director and telling stories for a living.
Well, very lucky to be able to do that. History Fix, of course, is all history. I know we share conversations about history. Where did the history bug bite you?
Very young, very young. I've always been drawn to American history, specifically Revolutionary War history. Obviously, that's not what Rocket has anything to do with, but those are the stories that I am drawn to. Sort of the early beginnings of this country and how that resonates to our life today, I find really interesting. And so, the historical films that speak to that have been some of my biggest inspirations.
Cool. As a filmmaker, what does a historic setting do for you?
As a filmmaker, the historic setting helps bring me into the world of the story. I think that's something with Rocket we thought a lot about, which was, how do you fill the frame with details of that time to transport the audience into that time? I find the more specific you can get with a detail on screen, the easier it is for the audience to kind of step into that world and go on that journey.
Great. Well, let's do this. Let's introduce Rocket. We keep talking around. Talking around it. Introduce Rocket as a story to me.
Rocket is a story about a young woman who inherits her father's racing legacy, which ultimately leads her to discover her own self identity. And it's a story that is inspired by my own family history, and kind of how I find myself as a filmmaker, often the only woman in a room full of guys at work, and how I have to find my place, and that this film is my projection of that experience in the world of racing.
Very cool. And where in racing? Obviously, History Fix. This isn't NASCAR today. Where does this land on the timeline?
This is ninth. It's the Okay. So the first few minutes are 1948, and the rest of the story takes place in 1952 in Lompoc, California.
Great. And one of the heroes of this story are the vehicles. We're racing, we're looking at cars. When you guys saw the discount code, you notice in the upper corner there, you get to see 3 really cool looking old race cars. Talk to us, especially on a lower budget short, talk to us about the cars that are such a character to this show.
They are a character. And, I always tell filmmakers when you're thinking about what movies you want to make or what stories you want to tell, especially when they're period pieces, you have to think about the things you have access to in your own life and how to take advantage of your ability to use those things in a story. So for me, my great grandfather had a racetrack in Southern California in the 40s and 50s called the Carroll Speedway. My grandfather grew up on that track, running around, idolizing these drivers. flash forward to my grandpa's an adult. Racing is not a cheap hobby. Um, and he started a business, in the middle of his life that started doing well. So he collected the cars that raced at his own dad's track when he was a kid. So
Wow.
then flash forward to me being a kid, going to vintage races with him, like imagining myself in these cars back in the day. So all of the cars, except for two, come from my grandpa's collection, which is a collection of the cars that raced at my great grandfather's track in the 40s and 50s. So it's a very special, specific to our family collection of cars, and specific to my own grandpa's journey in racing and in the car world.
Very cool. Were they all functional, or did you have to tow them? Were they always free
They
drove?
So thankfully, my grandpa's passion for vintage race cars also is an obsession, and he races them himself in vintage races. So almost all of the cars actually run, and he has a couple guys who help maintain and work on the cars, and they are both going to heaven for helping us out and keeping them running for the duration of the shoot. Like you said, lower budget stuff. It's hard to get these sort of like high production value things in the film. So for us, it was putting in a lot of energy to make sure that we took advantage of them as best we could, both in the story and on screen, because we knew it would sort of set the film apart if we could pull it off.
Sure, and you did a great job, and we shared a reel with one of the racing sequences today, so people can see that looking on our socials, and then come see it as the show, because I hid stuff in there so I didn't give away part of the show. So there's more to the story, and those races take you through the story. Talk to us about our two characters.
Yeah, so our two characters come from very different worlds, and the protagonist Annie comes from sort of a more solitary life, um, and also honoring like what she's inherited from her dad, who isn't around anymore. And so meeting a guy who comes from a very different world and sort of has a secret, like some of my favorite love stories, the what they pull out of each other further reveals who they are. And even though their story isn't the something I wanted to explore is, how do you tell a love story where um they don't end up together, but she learns more about herself through the experience, and who she is and who she isn't. So to me, this was her character is an exploration of someone finding their own self identity.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the together and the apart, because speaking as a cinematographer, as I rewatched this getting ready for today, I was really taken with the use of space in the frame, putting them together, keeping them apart. Talk a little bit about some of the conceiving of how you would tell this story visually.
Well, I have to credit our cinematographer, Nick Ramsey, who was fantastic and is really gifted. And I think, you know, what he was able to do is capture sort of the beauty that lies in the negative space of the frame. And um, sometimes, I remember having a conversation about short sighting some of the coverage so that we're really filling the frame with the rest of the world. Um, and really taking advantage of sort of that wide format. And when they're together, they really feel together. And when they're apart, they really feel apart. So that sort of influenced our approach.
Wide format. It obviously doesn't look like some things that you've seen as far as aspect ratio or the size of the box on the TV for those who aren't in our trade lingo. Talk to me about where what frame size you shot that at.
So we shot, I believe it's 240 is our aspect ratio. And sort of even though a majority of short films are watched on a phone or an iPad or hopefully a TV screen, we really wanted to create the widescreen cinema experience because our location was so vast and really lent itself to the wider frame and the shape of the car as well. These are really wide, long cars. They really lend themselves to that size of frame. We wanted to create a more traditionally big screen movie experience to tell the story.
I think you got it there. And whether people watch it on their TV or on their phone, I'm thrilled with the way it looks. Film or video shooting?
This was shot on the Alexa, which is a video, and we had a grant from Ari for this. So we have them
Fantastic.
to thank for our Alexa, and I believe our Alexa Mini for the racing stuff.
Great. Did you tow the cars at all, or did you rig, or how did you do some of those?
So anything that's free driven, the more wider stuff that's free driven, that was our stunt doubles driving the car, which was Susan Perkiser and Danny Downey. And those are, stunt drivers driving the vehicles. Anything where you can see our actors' faces, that was what I like to call a homemade process trailer that was attached to my dad's old Suburban that I kid you not broke on the last take. And that was our brave actors in the car with the two front wheels up on the process trailer, the camera operator on the process trailer being towed by my dad's old Suburban around that dirt track.
Gee, having heard that story, you got to do process trailer stuff this year on Chicago Fire, the show that I'm on, and I didn't get to do it with you. I had to hand it to my friend Christian because I couldn't get to stay because I had to go scout. So now knowing that and real process trailer, I wish I'd have been there with you for that.
Well, let me just say that the day we had on fire this year with Christian was much probably makes an insurance company much happier than the day I had shooting process stuff on Rocket.
Well, we love the stories, and it's great to hear some of that. How long did it take to film this?
We shot this in 10 days.
Okay, and talk to me a little bit about the production design. We haven't shared any images from inside the garage, but it's one of the richest spaces I've seen as far as texture and image. Talk to me about creating that world for Annie.
So our production designer, Rama Farahat, and I really wanted to capture this journey from cool to warmth for the character and sort of like tell the story that her inner life is very warm, but the way that she approaches the world, like her inability to sort of connect with people is more cool. And that's how we wanted to represent things. So the approach to the garage was that is her like inner sanctum and it's how she feels, about the world, whether or not she can communicate it. So the warmths and the oranges and the reds in there was definitely very intentional. The thing that's very lucky about that garage is we shot on a ranch in Lompoc and we used the exterior on that ranch as the exterior of the garage. Once they open the door, we are in the interior of the garage across the ranch across the street. And that garage, except for taking Coca-Cola and other things down, is almost exactly how we found it.
Wow.
So the
Wow.
movie gods blessed us immensely on this one.
Very cool. Well, it's just so rich, and then your cinematographer lighting it in the little pools. It's a delightful place to escape and get away and go somewhere else for a little bit. I was reminded of that today as I rewatched again.
Well, thank you. Yeah, Nick Ramsey, our DP, again, just he pulled out all the stops for this one. And like you said, the pools of light and what they were hitting, telling the story. There's holes in the top of this barn, it was a really cool approach he had.
Fun. Well, Brenna, you and I have shared a lot of miles together, and you've had a lot of miles since you did this, which kicked it off. And there's that famous saying in the film industry, no movie is ever finished, they're only just abandoned. I can hear you being excited by this. is there anything you'd wish to change or have back, or something you'd want to add to this? If you had a chance to give a recut, and maybe is there anything looking back that you wish you'd done different or wish you had the chance to do?
I hope you don't think this is sort of sidestepping the question. Um, there isn't, because I try not to entertain that question as a filmmaker, because I think there's something really valuable about like parameters, the time, the money, the weather, how many hours you have a day. Like that is part of the art. It's what can you do with that? So I look back at Rocket, and to me, it's a time capsule of the filmmakers we were when we made it. And sure, I'm sure I could come up with a million things. I wish this was a smoother move, or I gave a different direction here. I wish this line wasn't as hokey, whatever. But not really, because I think, you know, that that's what we could do with what we had. And art thrives in boundaries, and the boundaries we had, I think, really helped us.
I think you ran all the way up to the edge of the boundaries in every which way, shape, and form you could with this one. We had Andrew Pleva, who I know to be a fellow Californian of yours, just chime in and say good evening to all. So, Andrew, good evening. He's a friend of ours in the history community, so glad to see some folks checking in here. Let me ask you this, Brenna. You opened a little bit, so I'm sure I have an idea from what you said at the beginning where we're going to head. What's one historic story that you would love to be able to tell that you haven't yet?
Oh gosh, I wish I was prepped for this. Sorry. Um, One historic story. I mean, there is, I think, so many stories that happened during the American Revolution that have yet to be told. Stories outside of the founding fathers, point of view, which are great stories, and I'll always love the film renditions of those. But I think the more boots on the ground story would be something I'd, be interested in telling in the future.
Great. Okay, I'm going to say you can't pick the American Revolution for this question because you've gone there twice already. So
I know.
we're gonna,
Sorry.
and that's great. It's an era that I personally love and would love to do some more in. So, and I think as we come up to the 250th anniversary, I think is ripe to do some more in to tell stories because people are going to be paying attention to it. So I think that's a great answer. But what's one historic era that interests you that you'd love to work in?
I think World War II stories really interest me. I grew up in Long Beach, and there is a place called Terminal Island, um, which was before World War II. It was sort of a Japanese fishing community. And when the Japanese Americans were sent to internment camps, it was sort of like completely taken over, and their homes were taken from them, and they came back to nothing. And now it's this big, shipping area. And, I don't know if I'm the person to direct a story like that, but I certainly, like, as a producer, I would love to be involved in someone's rendition of that story. So, late 30s, Southern California, pre-early war, I find myself drawn to as well.
Great. Well, fantastic. Well, it's great to spend some time, Brenna. We're at a point where I'm through the list. Let me give you a little time to put a wrap into this, and sort of art does exist within boundaries, but there's a lot of people in those boundaries, and I know there's some very close family ties there. Any other people you want to talk about from the production of the show?
I think this story really brought me closer to my grandpa. Um, and it also brought me closer to his brother, Mike, and it brought them closer to each other throughout the making of this film. We shot the film on my uncle Mike's ranch in Lompoc, who has since passed away, unfortunately. And making this, I think, brought my grandpa and my uncle, it brought back memories of their own dad. And I'll never forget, we shot for, 9 days, and on the all almost all exterior day work. And on the 10th day, it was supposed to rain really hard. And if it rained, we were done because it was like a dirt track. We couldn't have shot anything if it rained. And I kid you not, we shot all day. And like 5 minutes after we called cut on the last shot, it started raining. And my Uncle Mike said, I know this was my dad, which would be my great grandfather, holding off the rain so that you could make this movie. And, I just find my Uncle Mike, I've spent more time with him making this film than I ever had in my life. And, he wasn't an outwardly vulnerable guy, but hearing him say that gave me a real insight into, his passion for telling this story. And to me, it's like that journey and what happens while you're making the film is equally or perhaps more valuable than the end result of the film. And also, it captured the history of my family. And so, being able to share it on History Fix is really special.
Wow. Well, when you talked about your great grandpa holding off the rain, I got goosebumps there. We've had two people jump in. First, Andrew Scott Bell says, great interview and thoughtful questions. So glad to have tuned in. Cheers. Andrew, we're glad you did. We'll take next week off and we'll be back. But this is just fun to get to sit and talk with an old friend. I just wish we were in the
Yes,
same room rather than halfway across the country.
I
Tarlin,
agree. And Will, I also have to say, Andrew Scott Bell scored the movie.
all right.
He's our composer.
All right.
So, hi,
There's
Andrew.
There's a ringer on your side. Here's a ringer from the other side. My friend Tara Lynn asks, who is someone you'd love to work with that you haven't gotten a chance to yet?
I would love to work with Frances McDormand. I think she's one of the best actors of the last 40 years of acting. I'd love to work with her.
Interesting. Would love to see that. For me, it's Cillian Murphy, and so much of what he's
Oh,
done has been period pieces, from the ones we know to the one I can't even pronounce, which is about the World War II subversive organization, Dunkirk. His Peaky Blinders. But who he is as an actor, someone I would love to work with and explore. So put the two of them together and let's find a show.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. He's
So,
so good in Dunkirk. I
yeah.
love that movie.
Yeah, so again, we get a chance. As I've said to people, two of the top five grossing films of all times are history films, and those are Gone with the Wind and Titanic. And I think I said this to you one day when you and I were having dinner. I pointed to a history painting and I pointed to something from Star Wars. At the first instant of the movie, people know they can escape their world and get away for a little bit. And it's been fun hearing about your world because you didn't escape. You went with your family and made this. And that's really fun to get to listen to and find out. So
Oh, thanks, Will.
talk to us about the end image in the story. People are going to see it. What's that? What's that still? Because I think with where we're talking about community, that's worth talking about.
Yeah, so I think I just wanted to, my grandpa and my great grandfather, who I never knew, you know, have had such a big impact on my life and sort of like my creative inspiration, especially with this film and it being the film that started my career. And I just wanted to sort of visually make them a part of the movie. So we shot our credit sequence, which is one take down a book, sort of memorabilia case that we curated. And I was talking to my grandpa while we were shooting it, and I said, do you have any photos of you and your dad, like, you know, at the track or with a car? And he sent me that, and I had to include it. I had to make it a part of the movie. And I'm so glad I did because so many people have asked me about it and have loved seeing sort of the true life inspiration at the end of the film.
Well, folks, Brenna has shared more than a lot of other directors because this piece is incredibly personal. Take some time, come on over to History Fix, even if it's just using the 7-day free trial. Take the time. This is about a half an hour that you're going to be really thankful that you spent. Brenna, thank you for spending time with us this evening as well.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, Will. Happy to be here.
Great. Well, we're sharing a look. If you do want to check out, there's the code again to support Brenna with the discount plan to say that, hey, you're a fan of Rocket. We will be off next week as far as the live stream goes. We will see you guys in 2 weeks with producer Deb Goodrich. Oh, as we go here, Nick Ramsey was your director of photography, Brenna, right?
Correct.
Nick just chimed in. He said, great interview. It was fun to go back through the memories. Nick, I'm glad you had a good time. Memories are part of what the game is. Congratulations, one cinematographer to another on a fantastically shot piece of work there. And Brenna, thanks for sharing with it. We will see you guys all in a couple of weeks here. Have a great evening, everybody.